Welcome to Marketing Blabs, the podcast where we dish out expert digital marketing advice without the sales spin. This pod is brought to you by Marketing Labs, a trusted and expert digital marketing agency based in Nottinghamshire. We're excited to bring you a fresh new season, packed with Q&As, topical discussions, campaign reviews and more, with a few laughs from the team along the way. Our goal is to give you the insights and knowledge you need to grow your business online without the jargon or fluff. Enjoy. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Marketing Blabs podcast. Today we're going to explore the world of digital PR, its benefits and how businesses can harness its power to elevate their online reputation. Digital PR is becoming increasingly important for businesses to get their message across and build their online presence. Traditional PR methods are no longer enough in today's digital world, and businesses need to adapt to the ever-changing online landscape. Joining me today is our head of content, Healy, our social and content exec, Walton. How are we doing today?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good, thanks, Tom.
We're missing Matt, aren't we?
We are.
He's riddled with the flu. Cold.
It's that time of year. I was just thinking, actually, Tom, you look really pale. And
Do
I think we just all need some sun.
I know, I do. And I'm definitely a summer person.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Me too. Yeah.
As soon as I get on that cricket field, I tan up. God.
Level up.
Lather up and tan. No, definitely. It's a bit horrible at the minute, isn't it? The weather. Yeah. It's like all gloomy and... Anyway, moving on. Talking about digital PR. So, I'm going to come to you first, Mel. What is digital PR and how does it differ from traditional PR sort of methods?
Digital PR is just about doing what you would normally do as part of traditional PR, but doing it online. And that gives you the ability then to not only be featured, but earn backlinks. So that's the key difference between digital PR and traditional PR, really. You're doing many of the same things, using the same techniques and tactics, albeit in a more efficient and streamlined manner now that we can do it online. But the added advantage of having mentions on websites rather than in hard copy paper form is that you can then earn backlinks to your website, which then generates you traffic and is a tick in a box for Google, who is looking at mentions of you, your brand, and your products. Yeah,
I think that's the big difference is PR is, at the end of the day, it's both for brand awareness, whether it's digital or traditional. But as you mentioned, Mel, the main key difference is that you've now got an actual SEO purpose for digital PR. It is about brand awareness, it is about visibility. It is different in terms of one is online and one isn't. The key difference, though, is that SEO factor as well.
So it's like a double-edged sword. You're getting credibility from people who are seeing you do good things in whatever it is that you're doing, but also you're getting the credibility from Google as a vote that you're getting that link.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice. So what traditional methods used to be, well, if we're talking back in the day, used to be sort of handy? Like, are we talking magazines, newspapers, things like that, or?
So there are still two main elements to PR, I would say, reactive and proactive. So reactive is obviously in response to journalists' requests, and that's still a big part of digital PR.
Yeah.
It just means that we can now do it online using platforms set up specifically for journalists to ask questions. And then there's proactive PR. So that is building a campaign and going out there and earning those mentions, whether that's offline or online, because you've got a good story that people want to tell. They want to retell it. Those are still the two main approaches to PR, I would say.
So other than the link and the awareness and filling that funnel up, are there any other benefits that we can think of to digital PR?
I think it's a lot more cost effective than traditional PR as well. If we're looking at kind of moving away from brand awareness or from the SEO backlink, it's so much more cost effective than kind of having to put your business in a newspaper and a TV and in radio. Doing it digitally is going to be so much cheaper for your business. And it also helps your smaller businesses. They're going to now have a chance at actually experimenting with PR, whereas back in the day, as we keep saying, they wouldn't have had that chance because it was too expensive for them.
Yeah. When I say back in the day, I'm not saying that doing magazine ads or articles or offline sort of publications are not relevant. I think they're still relevant. It's just the fact that digital PR is there. Like we could answer a journalist's questions right now on our laptops.
Yeah.
And it's quicker. It's you don't have to find the journalist who's asking that question. They're there and ready for you. So it's, I guess, the time element of it is
I think the results are also a key part of it. We get to see them pretty much as soon as now, whereas you probably wouldn't have seen that from a traditional perspective.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started out in PR, one of my jobs as junior member of staff was to go through the papers in the morning and look for all mentions of the organisation.
Yeah.
I also had to go through regional TV and watch the news programmes just to see if there were any mentions.
Yeah.
And so, like Kyle says, it's a lot more efficient now because we have the tools to be able to find mentions much easier. So it's quicker and easier to track your results.
Yeah.
Whereas PR traditionally has always been something that's been seen as hard to quantify and hard to measure the results of. I mean, what they used to do is they used to look at column inches and equate that to how much it would cost you to buy an advert.
Yeah.
And that's also really key, just coming back to something that Kyle said earlier. PR is unpaid. So these are unpaid mentions in offline or online. The investment is time.
Yeah.
And with the power of the internet now, that is much easier to do than it was when you used to have to pick up the phone and ring round. And you would have to ring round everybody and maintain relationships with journalists. I'm not saying that maintaining those relationships is not important now, because it is, but you can answer somebody's question online that you've never met before. Previous to that, you would have had a relationship with them for them to even know that you existed and were in the industry and were able to answer the question.
Yeah. I guess where an agency or a freelance PR specialist would come in to help the business owner would be actually putting the right publication together, because a business owner, they'll know the business, but they might not know how to put the publication together or how to put the answer together in a manner that's going to sort of get the journalists or whoever it is and users' attention. I'm not saying quantity over quality, but is it quite important that you go for quantity when it comes to it to maximise the opportunity of the answer, I guess?
I'd say it's a bit of a balance of both with digital PR, because, you want to get your name out there as much as you can as well, but you have to also focus on quality. There's certain aspects, you need to look for your domain authority is a huge one, where at the end of the day, the more
authoritative.
Yeah, there you go. The more authoritative website is going to generate a better backlink than one that isn't.
Yeah.
So it is a mixture of both quality and quantity. You can put out 10 PR answers to a domain authority of 3, but one that's maybe in a 60 or a 70 is going to be much more beneficial than those 10.
And it does also depend on what your objective is.
Yeah.
And like with anything in marketing, you need to start with that before you decide on an approach. So if you are purely looking for backlinks, your approach will be very different than that if you are looking for brand awareness, or you're launching a new product, for example, or you've got news to tell. Because in that case, you want to be in front of your ideal target audience. And that means that you have to cherry pick the publications. You can't just answer anybody's question because it earns you a backlink. You need to be in the right place at the right time. And that takes some thought and preparation before you start.
I guess that comes into my next question, really, about understanding any specific strategies for building out a digital PR campaign. I guess the main thing that you'll need to consider is what's the goal, what's the project, what's the what are we talking about here? Is it an event that you've done that's raised money or something like that? Just thinking off the top of my head, new product. I'm guessing, is there any sort of method that you take when a client approaches you for a digital PR campaign?
It does really start with figuring out what it is that they are trying to achieve. So some people will come to you with a good story already and they want to tell that story and they need the help to be able to do it. So to be able to put together an impactful and effective press release that can then be distributed in the right places. But some people come to you just knowing that they want to do some PR but don't necessarily have an idea of how they're going to do it. And so then our job is to find a good story, something that we can use with a really good hook that we think will be picked up by the types of publication that are right for that business. More often than not these days, you see a lot of data-driven campaigns. So sort of first-party research that a company might have done, a white paper that they've published, a sort of new statistic they've uncovered as part of their daily business that would make a really, really good story. That works very well. And we see a lot of that now.
Can digital PR, I'm assuming that digital PR is very much sort of top of the funnel awareness sort of activity. How does that affect other channels, and how does it tie into if a business is taking a multi or omni-channel approach where they've got SEO, paid social, Google Ads running, organic socials running, content? How does digital PR fit into that?
Well, like Mel said, it kind of, especially in terms of a content marketing perspective, maybe you've written a story or a piece out there that you're trying to get noticed by those publicists. When those then generate backlinks, they're going to link back to your content. So it's already there benefiting content marketing. And as we've said pretty much throughout the podcast, it's a huge impact as well on SEO. These backlinks that are generating are doing a massive thing for building SEO as well. Digital PR is already affecting those two channels. And it also works hand in hand with social media as well, just because you can also link to that social media aspect. Maybe there's a story that you've written as an organic social that you can link to that. So it all works hand in hand, but pretty much with whatever channel you've decided to focus on.
And it does mean as well that if you've created something that's good enough to be picked up by the media and for people to want to talk about, then the chances of it appearing then on social media are higher because other people will want to talk about it. So you see that a lot with experimental stuff and, you know, creative stunts and things like that. If it's been picked up by the media, it'll be talked about online somewhere else as well. So that in itself, social media is a big part of PR because, you know, everybody's got a phone camera. Everybody's their own reporter now, aren't they? And so they can also share your news and they can also take an opinion on it, take an angle on it. And that's really important to bear in mind as well, because not everything that you do will be always well received. And then it might be talked about, but it might not be talked about in the way you thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean, I always think I talk about the Jaguar campaign.
I knew that was coming.
That had both sides of it, though. You had people who didn't receive it well and people who received it really well. Like, it's never going to be, everyone's going to receive it well. Sometimes you will, and sometimes everyone will receive it badly. And But is there still such thing that any awareness is good awareness?
Not always.
No.
No, not always. I mean, I think in the case of Jaguar, then yes, I think it probably was a good thing because people were talking about it, whether they liked or disliked it. If enough of people liked it, then you've still got a revenue driver there, haven't you? And there might have been people there whose attention was drawn to it that wouldn't previously have, who didn't engage in the conversation online, but now know more about Jaguar than they did before. So yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends on the catastrophe, really, and the scale of it.
It's all a bit subjective, really, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big time. So when we're coming to talk about measuring the success of a digital PR campaign, how would you go about that? Would it be purely metric based on traffic? How would you approach that in terms of measurement?
I mean, again, it's one of those things where it is kind of 50-50. You can look at the metrics, you can look at the quality of the backlink or the website traffic. You can look at those sides as well. But as we've said throughout, what you've said in that article, for instance, what you might have mentioned there, how people are responding to that as well is also a huge factor on
engagement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing as well, because it's all about awareness. So whatever people are saying about whatever you have said is a massive factor. So you can track both the metric side of it and also public opinion.
I guess if you're looking at it from a measurement perspective and you see that, let's say a publication that you put out in January, your traffic spikes in February, it might be attributed to that post, for example, or article. Do we tend to see sort of big drops? Is it key to try and maintain consistency with digital PR so that we don't see like big spikes then drops or whatever?
Yeah, I would say so, because I think whatever you've put out there can also take a long time for that to get picked up as well.
Yeah.
So you do also have a point where you are going to see some months, if you just kind of put your one story out, you might see a month where it does get picked up, and as you mentioned, it's going to drop and it's going to dip from what it once was. So I think it's important to keep consistent with your digital PR so that you're seeing not just spikes every now and then, but quite a consistent flow instead.
So if there was a business out there that wanted to partake in digital PR or PR in total, we have our own sort of internal methods for how we do that and roll that out. But are there any platforms, websites or tools that we can share for people that might not have the budget to work with us, for example, or internal marketing managers for rolling out digital PR campaigns?
Yeah, so there are lots of online platforms. A quick Google will reveal most of them. There are different sorts of platforms to be aware of too. So there are those where journalists submit questions or requests for help a reporter out. Harrow, obviously, was the most famous up until recently. And you can answer their questions online. But there are also lots of platforms now that are essentially directories that have a network of journalists with their contact details accessible, and you can then get in touch with the right journalist, pitch your story, your idea. And then there are those where you can actually share your own press releases and other published work. So, it used to be sort of putting it on the wires, basically, just so that it gets picked up. Yeah, there's something out there for every sort of use case. It's just a matter of finding the right one for you so that it meets your particular needs. I will say they're not always necessarily cheap. There are some free trials and some that offer sort of basic free user packages to begin with. But really the best thing that you can do is find an agency to work with who already has relationships with the right journalists in the right industry, knows what they're doing, and has access to all of these tools and platforms.
We know that business owners are always struggle for time because they're busy doing what they need to do to run their business. But they can always, if they have got the time, reach out to local businesses if they want that outreach. It's quite a time-consuming process, isn't it? Like we say, getting into touch, I'm doing this, or collaborations and things like that, they can be quite powerful. But I guess it's just putting the time in, isn't it, and the effort.
Yeah, and you would be surprised how often people come to you who want to do something like PR but don't know where to start or feel that they've got a good story. And it just takes somebody who's got experience of finding and writing these stories to be able to seek it out. So you need to know and have a feel for what's newsworthy and what you think's got legs to be picked up and what hasn't. Sometimes people will want to put some dreadful things out like that people are not going to be interested in. But from their perspective as a business owner, they think, but why wouldn't anybody want to know about this? And of course it's, dull as dishwater and nobody wants to know about it. So it's just digging a bit deeper and unearthing something that actually is newsworthy. Once you've found that golden nugget, once you've got it, it's it's fantastic because you know that it's going to work and that it's going to spark interest in people. It's just finding it.
Have we got any examples of campaigns that we've done? It could be individually or via Marketing Labs where they've yielded good results. What those results look like is quite vague, I guess, but are there anything that we've got there?
I mean, I've got lots of examples working in previous roles from sort of working with the police is obviously, it's unfair to use the success of that because, local newspapers are full of police and crime stories. That makes up the majority of their space and airtime, So obviously that's an easier sell. But then moving into something like selling, for example, van conversions, that's something a little bit different and more difficult to find a sexy, newsworthy story for. But it can be done, and I did do it, but building relationships with industry publications. And of course, it always helps to grease the wheels. So if you're buying advertising with smaller industry publications, they're much more likely to be receptive to you when you go to them with a press release or something that you'd like their help with to get coverage for. So I did it quite successfully with fleet publications. And every industry has its own range of media that you'll get to be familiar with. And it's surprising how many there are for each industry that if you don't work in that industry, you would never have heard of and would have no idea of whatsoever. I mean, a good example is we get a delivery every month of biscuits, and what comes with it? Biscuit Digest. Is that what it's called? You read it, Kyle?
Yeah, it is.
Like, who's ever heard of Biscuit Digest? None of us had heard of that before it arrived.
Yeah.
But it's just an example of a really niche publication where what you're selling might not, and when I say selling, I don't mean a product, I mean a story.
Yeah.
What you're trying to pitch might be of absolutely no interest to Forbes or the BBC or, the Telegraph, but Biscuit Digest, I mean, they might love it.
Yeah.
If that's their wheelhouse, So it's really important, I would say, to find the right people to get in front of with a good story.
It makes complete sense, really, doesn't it?
When you're coming up with the ideas for either campaigns or one-offs, you have something called on diary and off diary. And on diary are things that will be very familiar to Carl, for example, who looks after all of our organic social. They're things you know about. So those are the things that are coming up which you can use to piggyback on to create content. So, for example, event days, national awareness days, things like that. I was just thinking Road Safety Week, for example, was a big one for us when I worked in van conversions because obviously it has a link back to transport. So that kind of thing is really useful. If you can gather together, an events calendar, your events as a business as well as national events and use those if you're doing something specific. And remember, local angles are really important. So if you're a local business and you can build relationships with local journalists, that's a really useful angle because people want to read about people in their area, and the more local the better. So use that as an angle, use that as an in. And if you've got something coming up, an event or something that you're doing for charity maybe, and you can link that back to a local angle, that's a really good way in for small businesses who are on a tight budget but want to try to earn themselves some space or mentions in the media. I'm just thinking one of our clients, who they don't use us for it, but they do it very well, is Walton, who have lots of links locally, and they really shout about the things that they do for charity. And that's really good for their CSR, for their corporate social responsibility. And it will do them a lot of good in the local area, really improving their reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think we always say, don't we, when you personalize and humanize yourself,
Yeah.
it's a massive thing for your business, and it's a massive thing for
Yeah.
PR as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's people who want to read about people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you can do that, you can make it about not just you as a faceless corporate entity, but you as people. That again is more likely to earn you a place in the media's news stories that day than anything else. And piggyback newsjack on big stories of the day. If there's something happening that you've got a take on, that you've got an opinion on because it's close to your industry or your business, your area of work, then don't be afraid to call and say, look, I'm a local business and I've got an angle on that. It might be a national news story, but I've got an angle on it. And I you know, and you can do that digitally now because there'll be journalists out there that want to hear from local businesses with an opinion on it. And they can find you via these platforms online, because obviously when you sign up, you fill out a profile. So that's got on there who you are, what you do, where you're based, your experience. And that's another way for people to be able to find you.
Nice. Some useful stuff there. Talking about humanising and personal and people to people. What about the flip side with AI coming into play? Has that played a role, or will it play a role, do we think, in the expansion of digital PR?
Yeah, it of course definitely does. It helps in every aspect of marketing. And as long as the one thing that we'll say, so that we're not absolutely contradicting ourselves, is it is okay to use AI whilst you are doing digital PR. That's absolutely fine, but you have to realize that you have to do it for the right reasons. That's the important thing when you use AI in any platform. You can use it as a content outline, maybe even kind of a first draft or a rough idea of what you're going after. But if you're copy and pasting straight from ChatGPT or from DeepSeek, whatever you may use, straight into kind of whatever it is you're trying to publish out, that's where there's a huge error. Do it to give you a couple of ideas. Do it to, like you said, get the ball rolling if you may be struggling for those ideas. But you have to have that human touch, because people will notice straight away that you're using AI.
Yeah.
It starts every kind of content piece off as something in the evolving digital landscape. You can tell from a mile away what's AI and what isn't. So just make sure that you've got that human touch behind what you're doing.
So, nice. I think there's some good topics we've talked about there. Hopefully it helps people understand what digital PR is. Hope you guys have enjoyed it.
Definitely have.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
As
you.
always.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Not just in this room, but on the planet. So that's all for today's episode of Marketing Blabs. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Mel and Kyle and learned something new about the importance of digital PR for your business. Remember, building your online presence takes time and effort, but with the right strategies and tools, you can elevate your brand reputation and reach new audiences. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Marketing Blabs. Bye.